Welcome back, everybody, to me talking about the Wheel of Time, and it is time to talk about Crossroads of Twilight. That's right, I started the 10th book today. We'll finish it at the end of the week. That's sort of the plan for now. I hope I'll, be also out of my plague prison by the end of the week, but that one's up to, tests and shit. Anyway, I started today, and we're talking today about the first 3 chapters and a rather long prologue, I guess. So, without further ado, let's just do that, shall we? Why, cheers. Alright, so, since we're talking, about only 3 chapters and the usual prologue kind of thing, things will probably be a bit quicker today, and there's not that much to complain about yet. So, the 3 chapters are all Matt chapters about him and what happened between, his flight from Ebudar and outside of, just his flight from Ebudar. Whereas the prologue does the usual thing, which is, jump from one character to the next character to the next character to just give us like an overview of like how things stand in Wheel World, or whatever the name of that place is, right? So nothing really brilliantly new happened here. There's, stuff that we'll go through bit by bit, but nothing world-shattering happened yet. Interestingly enough, we have no news whatsoever what happens with Rand so far, but one of the reasons why that is the case is because we're talking about, once again, something that Robert Jordan has done before, that is, have like those novels overlap where the chronology is concerned. By which I mean the events that ended whatever the last book was. God. Not Path of Daggers, the one afterwards. I'm not good with this crap. Winter's Heart, that's the one, right? So whatever ended Winter's Heart, which is, Rand doing the cleansing of Sidene, happen at the end of chapter 3 of Crossroads of Twilight. At least we can assume that much. All right, so far there's like a lot of like actual events, shit actually happening. We see, the investment of Camelin through the eyes of Davram Bashir, and we see how ridiculous the whole thing seems, at least through his eyes. Well, it's not really that interesting. I mean, it's military stuff. They're building camps on the streets. We're talking a bit about how difficult it is to invest and besiege a large city. All of that makes a lot of sense. And then Bashir's wife, whose name I have forgotten because who cares, gets attacked because she surprises 2 thieves, possibly, or they were assassins to start with. And those 2 assassins are then also killed, so we don't know who sent them, because mysteries, right? That bit is just like mostly straightforward, because there's not much to talk about here. It's like, we get a bit of like, Bashir is trying to not get into the whole thing. There is, for whatever reason, some form of tension sent up with Tenobia, Queen of Zaldea, because she may or may not want Davram Bashir's head. We'll see how that works. I am not very concerned for his health, though. I don't think that makes any sense. It's more like, once again, one of those, like, trust me on this kind of things that Robert Jordan does a lot of, right? Which is like, I'll just tell you there is tension, and then you need to take his word on it, because we don't see any of it. And we have not actually gotten, like, any really good reasons of why yet either. It's like, yeah, apparently he ran away with an entire army, and she's pissed off about that. And I do understand that, but it's more like, how can he just run away with an entire army and they will just follow him? That just doesn't make any sense to start with. And this is sort of where I see the problem there. Is like, yeah, she's probably pissed off about him for some reason, but we also haven't really seen like any good reason why the whole like Borderland gang wants to meet Rand or what they want to do to Rand. We don't. I mean, yeah, maybe, but who knows? It's also taking way too long for them to do anything, but, 2 books in since they decided to go anywhere. But this is definitely when we have, very much slowed down the pace in a lot of ways. Another interesting choice is, at this point in the series, is we're introducing new characters. Not only new characters, but like a new whole plot line, and that is stuff that's happening down in Aradoman. With someone whose name I've already forgotten, but I'm sure I'll remember if he shows up again in like 2 books or so. Being another one of those great captains, and we need to talk about great captains at some point, right? My point is, they are planning to, unite all the rebels and stuff to push back against the Shanchan. And there's also some, doubts about the sanity of the King of Aradoman, which makes a lot of sense because we all know that he's either dead or imprisoned by Grendel, who hangs out in Aradoman for reasons. So that's just like a quick bit there. It doesn't it works solidly because we don't have too much stuff actually happening there. They just meet, they decide to do that, and then there will be plans to kick the Shanchan. We'll see how that works when it happens. It's also still super snowy and shit, and I'm like, yeah. The whole weather thing is something that I don't really understand, right? It's like, yes, it was super dry because the Dark One fucked up the weather. Then they find the Bowl of the Winds and do their wind thing. And you'd think that now the weather is fine again, but now it's just way longer winter than it was supposed to be, so whatever. Yeah. And once again, nothing too, insane going down there with the Damani people down there. Anyway, who else do we check in? We check in on Aemon Valda and the Children of the Light that are planning to do something, apparently to the White Tower or the Rebel Army. It's not quite clear because, we're still in the prologue and building up expectation stage of this book. So they're doing something. We just have the whole thing with that Chief Inquisitor. And I don't get, and this is once again shitty world building, right? So there are the questioners, the Inquisitors basically, the Hand of the Light. And everyone apparently hates them. And everyone is afraid of them within the organization of the Children of the Light. And I'm like, so why are you tolerating those fuckers, right? I mean, they are not fighters. You have an entire fucking army of thousands of people, and you tolerate those people that apparently all those 10,000 soldiers think are cruel sadists that no one wants to deal with. Why are they there? Why are you still dealing with those fuckers? It doesn't make any sense. But the whole concept of the Children of the Light doesn't really make sense, in my opinion, because, religion, no religion, Robert Jordan's not quite sure what he wants to do there, I feel. It still doesn't really work out to my mind, but, I have come to accept the fact that a lot of this stuff will just be shoddy world building all the way through. Anyway, we'll see what happens there when it happens, but the Children of the Light are on the move. There will be a battle at some point, I assume. What kind of battle? We will see. So who else do we need to check in with? Well, Aes Sedai, of course, because we have to talk about Aes Sedai, both in the White Tower, where that whole Inquisition thing is going on, where they used the Oath Rod to discover Black Aja sisters, and there's one thing that I don't really understand. So apparently there's a lot of paranoia in the White Tower. And they even goes and writes down people are afraid to walk through the corridors on their own. It's what the fuck are those people afraid of, though? It's they apparently do have some intrigue problems and shit like that. It's yeah, I get that. But why does that make an Aes Sedai, an individual Aes Sedai woman, afraid of walking through their home fortress on her own. It's like, what's the danger there? To be spanked or birched or whipped? Is that what's the problem? It's like, I don't get it. It's like, I know that he's trying to go for this like air, air of paranoia and shit, and I get it, but you probably need some sort of actual real threat. Now, if there was like another attempt where like one or two sisters got murdered or attacked by someone, there's like an actual real threat in there, but there's no threat in the White Tower. It's like, why are they I mean, I get it why they're like pissed off or whatever, but like, why are they afraid of leaving their quarters and walking around alone? It's like, give me a fucking reason, Bobby J, right? Which, once again, goes to show how shoddy a lot of this stuff is, because we're supposed to take these things on Jordan's word. It's like, yeah, they're all afraid. I'm telling you, so you have to believe me. It's like, yeah, I don't believe you because you don't give me any reasons. And when I think about the situation, I don't see why they should be afraid. I mean, apart from, like, apparently them not liking to get spanked. Although, whatever. Once again, I just doesn't really add up. Oh, well, apparently there's another, like, weird conspiracy thing going on with the Aja. And we need to talk about the Aja at some point as well. But we'll see. We also have a situation with, what's his name? Gavin, because 2 books later we hear about Gavin Trakand again. And he's hanging out outside of Tarvalon, which is now under siege, so I assume Gareth Bryn and his gang and Egwene have come to besiege Tarvalon at this point. We'll see. There's not much going on there either. He's just hanging around, doesn't know what to do, is uncertain and shit, and then an Aes Sedai shows up and tells him that she has orders from what's her name, from Elida. But we don't know what the orders are, because once again, this is the prologue. We just get like one cliffhanger after the other. It's sort of like a teaser trailer kind of thing this time around. We also check in with Logain, and there's apparently some sort of trouble within the Black Tower, and I'm also not really sure how that works, because once again, apparently the Ashaman have at least 2 factions. One of them is Mazrim Times, and the other one is Logain's. And yeah, why that is the case is something that I don't understand. So apparently everyone takes that for granted, but we never get any explanation. Now, it could be that our only like viewpoint character in that area are like those two, one of those 2 in this case, Aes Sedai that are bonded to Logain, and they don't know what's going on because it's kept like secret from them. But at this point, I'm like, okay, so they hate each other, but why? Maybe we'll get a flashback or something where it is explained of why those 2 really hate each other, because we never even found out like why Logain I mean, yes, we know why Logain shows up at the Black Tower. It's like because Egwene sent him, sort of. But still, it feels a bit half-assed, basically. But anyway, he goes off to do something. And we kind of learn what he's doing at the end of the prologue when we talk about the last bit that we need to talk here about, and that is what's going on in Cairhien with 2 other Aes Sedai. And this is like the usual, stuff not really adding up. I mean, the plot line is straightforward. They're hanging out there, Loyal and one of the Ashaman return, and then Dobrain, the steward of Rand's, and Cairhien gets attacked, and one of the Aes Sedai saves him, which is pretty cool, or at least saves him so far. And then another Aes Sedai shows up, it's like, oh, by the way, Logain and a gang of Aes Sedai have just wandered into town, and that's where we leave it. So, straightforward there, right? Apparently, Loyal is back. Maybe he has on a secret mission from Rand. We don't know exactly, because we don't hear about it. But most of it is taken up by this weird power struggle between 2 Aes Sedai, that being the one left behind by Cadsuane, and the other one whose name I have already forgotten again, because who cares about Aes Sedai names? They all have names with A in it. And that's all I need to know about them right now. Anyway, she's one of those who got like stilled and then repurposed, healed, and whatnot. And this is very interesting because remember with what's her name, Swan Sanche. When she got stilled, she basically lost her affiliation to an Aja and had to reapply to become Blue Aja again, while Liane reapplied to become Green Aja this time round. Apparently, this doesn't work here because that one Aes Sedai, whose name I have forgotten because who cares, Seychelle, something like that, whatever. She's still considered red now that she's healed. So apparently there's an inconsistency there that doesn't really add up. I mean, yeah, you can probably explain it by saying, yeah, but she's, part of Elida's gang and it doesn't work like with the rebels. Also, she's not actually returned to the White Tower or anything, so who knows? Also, maybe, can she go and lie now? Do we know that? I mean, Swan can, because she hasn't retaken the oaths, because apparently the oaths are also broken. We don't know. The other interesting thing, however, is that Samitu, whatever the one left behind by Cadswain, is trying to control everything in Kyrian. And here's my problem: it's like we have her viewpoint, and she's like, yeah, Rand is making all these problems and whatnot. It's like, but what are your goals here? Is it just that you like to control, or we are supposed to have the idea that Aes Sedai like to control people or whatever, because there seems to be no point to it. It's like, yeah, look, the city's running properly. Do you have like any actual things you want to achieve here, apart from like knowing that it was you who is in charge? Is that all it is? Is it just being power hungry, or is there like an actual idea behind it, like anything that you need to achieve? Like, I don't know, get Kyrian to build up an army, get Kyrian to do X or Y or Z. We don't know. And there's no explanation. It just seems ridiculous because, the whole concept of Aes Sedai being in charge still doesn't really work for me here, because it never actually gets explained on like why people would believe them, why people would trust them, what kind of hold they have over anyone. We don't get the answers to that either, and we don't have any goals. Like what's your actual like goal? Now, with like back on the day with Dune and the Bene Gesserit, we know that the goal is to create the Kwisatz Haderach. But is the goal of the White Tower and the Aes Sedai to hang around until the Dragon Reborn shows up and then deal with the Dragon Reborn to make sure that everyone wins that final battle, if it happens? Or is there like another thing there? Are they just like the Children of the Light, one of those organizations that everyone kind of accepts existing even though there's no reason for them? We don't know. So yeah, that's sort of all what happened, all the things happening in the prologue. One thing that I wanted to mention is the idea of great captains, because apparently, and this is something that is a world-building issue that we see both with Robert Jordan and then later on with Brandon Sanderson, because I think it's clear that Brandon Sanderson was already heavily influenced by Jordan when he started writing. But my point is, everything has to be categorized and be brought into all kinds of names. So apparently, it's not just like, well, that guy's Davram Bashir is actually, he's a pretty good general. No, he's a great captain. Same as Gareth Britt. Like, who gives out the title great captain? Is that like the Wheel World's Association of of military tactical analysis or what? I mean, who bestows the title of great captain on people? Now we have another one of those showing up in what's his place, down in Aradoman, right? And we have, I think, Agelmar is one of them as well over in Shinar. It's like, who gives out those titles? Is that like Michelin stars for good cooking? Whatever. It's, oh, you're a 3-star great captain because we analyzed your last battle and it was really something. I don't know. And, it's the same thing. We have the Ajahn, the Kaaba. They're like all categorized in different colors, different ranks and stuff. It's this obsession with quantifying and then titling everything within the world. It has to be super, super structured as a world. And no, that's not how worlds work. And I mean, that's a personal taste thing, I guess, for me, that I think at some point it becomes obnoxious because, everything has to be categorized, quantified, and sorted through. And I feel worlds are more messy than that. All right. Let's talk about Matt's stuff. So Matt's hanging out with everyone in Luca's circus, hiding in plain sight from the Shan-Chan. He's pretending that Egyanan, who is still called Egin, now Aeginan at this point, because apparently no one ever bothered to listen back how they pronounce her name, in Shadow Rising. But I guess we'll get just, have to live with inconsistencies where narration is concerned. It's not the only book that does that. It's just like with Aegianan, it kind of pisses me off a lot because it's the same kind of narrators. It's not like, with Game of Thrones where first John Lee narrated Feast for Crows and pronounced names differently. No, it's the same kind of people, so he should probably just know, or maybe just get back and check. Anyway, what do we get here? Not much really. There's ridiculous, bantering with what's his name between Matt and what's her name? Oh, God, I forgot her name, right? The daughter of the Nine Moons. Tuon, right? That one, right? There's some bantering there. She calls him Toy. He's like, no, my name's Matt. And I'll just give you no title until you decide to not call me Toy anymore. Like, okay, maybe this is still how kidnapped princesses or empresses to be talk to people. Maybe that's the case. We don't know. But, realistic characters are not what we see in The Wheel of Time. We've realized that at this point. So what is interesting is, I think, both the way, and this is clever, like for once, the way we learn about the flight from Abu Dar through Matt's memories and flashbacks. That was just competently written and handled. So credit where it's due. That was good, Bobby J. You managed it. A flashback successfully employed. Pretty good. Apart from that, we learned that Tynan got murdered by what's his name? By the Golem. And I don't like that much. I mean, it's interesting. I guess we will see. So here's the thing: her being murdered by the Golem, and that giving Matt, making Matt feeling responsible for her death, is something that you can do. It's not my favorite way of handling things, but I guess we can talk about feelings of responsibility there and guilt and whatnot. You can totally go and do that. My doubts and my problems are that I don't trust Robert Jordan to handle questions of guilt in any meaningful way as a writer, because we've seen how he fucked it up so far with Rand and women dying. So I'm not sure that will work out in any proper way. And if it doesn't, it feels more like, oh, by the way, she was a strong woman that tried to, control Matt, so she has to die, because every time women get strong, those are the ones that die in these books. Same as the Maidens of the Spear that were pissed off with Rand not, talking to them and whatnot, and spanked them. Those were exactly the ones that got killed by as collateral damage when the Ashaman tried to kill Rand, right? So there is a probably subconscious pattern there, if that is the case. The other side of it is yeah. Why does it have to be the Golem? Why does Tylan actually have to die? I don't know. It feels unnecessary, and so far I feel the only explanation is exactly that. If the problem is about how to get Beslin on the throne, so Abu Dar will rebel, I can see all of that, but then there could be all kinds of other ways to do it than just do it also in the off, right? It's have Tom show up, it's oh, by the way, your ex has just been murdered brutally. It feels a bit cheap, I guess, is what it is. You have that odd and not really well thought out relationship between Tylan and Matt, and then Matt goes and she gets murdered because we don't need her anymore. It's I don't know. You could have just have the murder happen and that gave Matt a reason to flee the city. That would have worked as well. But we don't. We don't get that. What we get is instead that. There's also a power struggle with Aegianan. I'll just keep calling her Aegianan because fuck that. And Matt, because she thinks she's in charge and Matt thinks he's in charge. And there will be more stuff like that in the future. But we end the chapter with Matt talking to those annoying Aes Sedai because Jolene or whatever her name is remains unrealistic and whatnot, because yeah. But Matt finds out that someone is channeling a shit ton of whatnot, and he has a vision that it might just be Rand, and so we now know that this is while it happens while Sidene gets cleansed. So brings us up to speed, I guess. But I want to, have a quick check-in with the whole Jolene things. Like, I know that we're supposed to understand that Aes Sedai are unrealistically ignorant of a lot of stuff because of their arrogance. And I get that. But we have someone who was just pushed around, had to hide for weeks and whatnot, has seen her sisters being, Domani, like, captured and used as slaves and whatnot. And she just lacks any form of understanding. There's like, why is that? And the only, like, explanation I can come up with is that Robert Jordan thinks that women are incapable of learning, and also putting more than two women in one room will always, like more than one woman in one room, will always result in either first a conspiracy to pull something over a man, which will obviously backfire and then require that man to save those women, and it will also result in fights, because apparently women can never talk just like to each other. It has always to be like a conflict or anything. But we've learned that before. So, I don't know. It ends with the circus starting to march off and still going towards Rand. We'll see how all of that develops in future chapters, by which I mean tomorrow. So far, not much has happened. The whole, like, look at everything in the prologue was solid. Nothing really new to be annoyed about, but I want to keep an eye on the idea of, like, how many strong women come to harm after, standing up to guys, and whether that is, becoming something of a habit. Anyway, that's it for today. I'll talk to you tomorrow about more of this stuff, I guess. So, have a great day, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.